Hey lovelies, it is me Kykles and welcome back to our channel for another Let's Chat. I'm super excited because I haven't done one of these videos in a while and I'm just really excited to tell you about something that happened to me yesterday, even though it is not on the best circumstances at all. But I'm really excited because I want to start incorporating more of these Let's Chat videos maybe once a week to kind of catch up with you guys in terms of my personal life. And I know I have a main channel and things, but I feel as though incorporating some real life personal stuff, I guess, or real life stuff outside of like simming and stuff would benefit my channel. And I'm sure you guys would enjoy it. Give this video a like if you'd like to see more Let's Chat videos, maybe once a week, maybe every Sunday or something. So this video is more serious. It is not anything about my channel. It is something that happened to me yesterday, and in no shape or form does it involve The Sims. So just a disclaimer, but don't go anywhere. Do not go anywhere because the storyal is real. That's what I was trying to say. I was trying to say story is real, but I kind of got them tongue-tied. That happens quite a bit on my channel. Anyways, guys, so if you are new here, my name is Kylieanne. I'm 23 and I'm from New Zealand. Just to get that out of the way. Yeah. Okay. I'm super random today. Anyways. And to my returning lovelies, I see you there. I see each and every single one of you. I really appreciate you guys coming back and checking out this video because it is an important, vital video. And what I mean by that is what happened to me yesterday, you guys may be able to relate in some shape or form. Whether it happened to you personally or someone you know, you'll definitely be able to relate to this in some way. So let's just get started. So disclaimer before we do get started. Kylie, disclaimers always happen before we get started. Okay. Disclaimer. This video is serious. It is a real life thing that happened yesterday. It may have some triggers for some people. It may also upset some of you, and it upsets me a lot. Yesterday there was no videos because I was really upset, and I haven't talked about this on social media at all, and this is the first time I'm talking about it. So what better way to talk about it than in a Let's Chat, because this is what I like to do. I like to sit down, talk to you, no editing, no nothing apart from, you know, some music and thumbnails, but that's different. I mean, no audio like editing, no nothing. It's just what you hear is what you hear pretty much. And I guess it's just a way for you guys to actually connect with me and get to know me, you know, the person behind the simming videos, the person behind all the tweets, the Instagram pictures and all that. So let's just get started. So disclaimer, I've got that out of the way. Another quick disclaimer, I am going to be reading it off an email I sent last night. And I'll explain to you why I'm reading it off an email, because there's so much detail and I do not want to miss any of it. So let's just get started. So yesterday I had no videos up because I was at the hospital getting a CT scan done. And I was really nervous. On a scale of 1 to 10 on how nervous I was, 10 being the worst, I was maybe an 8.5. And when I first got into the hospital, I had a little bit of an anxiety panic attack. I managed to calm myself down. Sometimes when I have anxiety attacks, you can't actually see my anxiety attacks because my heart races. I start to get all sweaty, my palms sweat, and I start to feel a little bit dizzy. I feel like I'm going to pass out. And I managed to just breathe and think it's going to be over. Tonight, this is not going to matter because it's going to be over. And I'm going to be fine. I'm in a safe environment with my partner and my mum. I'm safe. I'm happy and I'm safe. So it's just those positive affirmations that get me through. So anyways, so I arrive at the hospital with my fiance. My partner, if I say my partner or my fiance, I mean my fiance, but sometimes I just say my partner because it's just us Kiwis, you know, partners, yeah. Anyways, so I arrived at the hospital and my appointment was in the afternoon. It was quite late in the afternoon for me. So I arrived there and I had to wait for my mum. So we, received my letter in the post 6 weeks before, and I had all that. Waited for my mum at the reception area, and then we continued to find the place where I had to go to have this scan. So we kind of follow the arrows in the back of the paper, and it leads us to this small little room. You got this long corridor, and then the rooms to the left, and it's just kind of like all open kind of thing. It's got this open archway, and you can see in and you can see out. There's no doors. In the waiting room, there was all these patients, and of course there was no nurses or anything. Like, there was no reception desk, and I was like, this is weird. This is really weird. And of course the nurse says to us, no, I'm in the wrong place. I need to go back and check in at the desk that we would have gone past before, which we did. We went past a desk, but we thought we'd just follow the CT arrows, leading us to the waiting room. So we go back to this waiting room, and of course we're in the wrong place again. So we had to go back to the other reception, which was at the start of the, kind of like the entranceway, but kind of not, like around the corner a bit. So we go around there and we check in, and all is well. They say, okay, cool, just go back around where we originally went, where the small waiting room was. So we go around, and things are fine. I'm feeling really anxious, and just as we are just about to turn the corner, who happened to turn the freaking corner? My dad's parents, which are my grandparents. Now, you probably are wondering, well, what? So? Their family, it's all good. Did you stop and talk? Well, the situation at the moment, I'm not going to go into too much because that is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to get into today. There's too much to talk about. So maybe in another Let's Chat video, if you guys are interested, I'll talk about that. But pretty much the relationship between me and my father is non-existent right now. No contact. He is a narcissist. My grandparents have narcissistic traits. I choose to be happy. I choose to be healthy. And when I went around to their house after Christmas, I didn't get a very good response. And that is because they're siding with my father. And I told them a month or so ago before I saw them that I was going no contact. And they were like, oh, we don't want to be in the middle. And then when I went around there, they were all cold and distant. It was horrible. And anything that I tell my grandparents gets straight back to my father. So, of course, they saw me, and yeah. So I was really, really kind of on edge about that all day. Like, oh my goodness, what if they tell my father and my father tries to contact me? And because he tries, like, he manipulates me so much, and he manipulates everybody. He would be the type of person that would text and go, oh my goodness, you're at the hospital. Are you okay? But yet he hasn't even contacted me for 2 or 3 years consistently. Yeah, so it doesn't add up. Anyways, that's a different story, okay? I'm not going to get into that today. Anyways, so of course I just kind of walk off, and my mum's there, and she's like, oh, how are you guys? And then we kind of walk off and go. They didn't say hello to my fiance at all. They were really, really distant and cold with me and my fiance, as well as my mum. But then again, I wasn't there, so I don't know, because I just walked off. I was like, hi, and I sort of walked off. Call it rude, but it's not. It is my decision, and I'm happy with that, and we're going to roll with it. As I said, there'll be a different video on that. So yeah, just calm down. There'll be a different video. I know you're real anxious to know what happened. Anyways, so I arrived and I sat down at this waiting room after checking in with the nurse and things. And I was waiting to see the first nurse to get my IV contrast injected to prepare for my scan. When I was called in to have this happen, 10 or 15 minutes later, I was told by a staff member in a green uniform, no names given, who was organising the patients and assisting with the CT prep and, taking forms from everybody. She wasn't a nurse or a doctor. She was just an assistant. So I was told by her to sit down and wait in this other side room behind these doors, and my mum and my fiance were left in the waiting room, and the waiting room was chocker full with people. There was only 2 seats spare. I took one. My mum and my fiance were left waiting in the hallway for about half an hour because there was no seats. Anyways, so I go into this small room with this staff member, and she's like, just wait here, just sit down. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, and I was very polite, and I said, thank you, I will. And I sat down, and I waited, and they had like this pillow up on the armrest. So I put my hand up because I knew it was my arm, because I knew I was going to get the IV contrast put in via injection. So this is when it gets real. So she left, and then the nurse arrived maybe 2-3 minutes, well, not even that, maybe a minute after. And I was just sitting down waiting. She explained that she was going to give me the IV injection and that she'd be doing it, you know, very soon. I explained to the nurse straight after that I was a very hard taker and they always struggle to get blood out of me when I go for blood tests or when I, you know, withdraw blood or get, you know, whatever. The nurse then proceeded and couldn't find a vein at all to inject the IV into. And this time she was there wiggling the needle around for about 2 or 3 minutes. It felt like 2 or 3 minutes, you guys. It really did. It was probably only like 2 minutes, but it felt like 3 minutes. It felt like freaking a whole day she was sitting there. Well, not sitting there. She was standing there trying to wiggle around to get blood out of me. So, of course, she withdrew the needle after trying. After all of this, I was told to wait back in the waiting room. We're going to do it in the CT machine by the nurse. Then, all of a sudden, these 2 nurses in white uniforms come rushing, or not rushing, but they come walking to my chair and they're talking to me. They're like, oh, we're just going to do it in the CT machine. It's a CT, you know, CT, what did they say? An IV CT in the machine. It's going to be okay. And I'm just like, what? Calm down. Like, what is going on, you know? And they were pointing, like, into the CT room. And I was like, okay, so I'm going in there. And then the other nurse was like, just go in the waiting room. And I was like, oh, my goodness, what am I doing? In the meantime, I looked down and my arm was bleeding. Of course, they'd injected a needle into me. So, of course, I was going to be bleeding. The nurse was just standing there, you guys. She was just freaking standing there. While I was bleeding, I had to hold my hand over it because I was kind of told to go wait in the waiting room. They didn't even supply me with a tissue or compress it afterwards, which you're supposed to do, which is common knowledge. And I thought of an RN, which is a registered nurse. I thought she would know better. And so I'm left walking back into the waiting room where at that point my mum and my partner had found a seat before I went in anyway, because there was a guy went in and there was a few seats so that we sat down and everything. So they were sitting down and I walked back over to the seat and I was holding my arm and I remember holding my arm and I remember because it was bleeding and I sat down and they were like, what happened? You know, are you okay? And I showed them my arm and it was still bleeding. And she was like, what? My mom was like, what? You know, and my partner was like, what happened? I was like, well, they couldn't find a vein and they didn't even give me a compress. So luckily, my mother had a tissue for the bleeding, which continued many minutes after I sat down. So at this point, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I'm feeling really upset because the lady in the green was really rude and disrespectful and she just really snappy and snarly and things. And it was really horrible and I didn't feel reassured at all. I felt really concerned and really anxious about the procedure that was going to be happening next. So I sat down and I honestly started to cry because I was so overwhelmed by everything, you guys. I was overwhelmed by so many nurses, and when I went into the room, there was this lady in this bed next to me. She was in a coma, and I guess that really hit me hard because the man that was waiting in the waiting room with my, you know, he was standing beside my partner and my mum. He was standing there waiting to know what was happening or waiting to kind of be let into this room. And I was sitting right beside her and it was so scary, you guys. It was really scary. You know, she was just laying there. She had this IV in her arm and she had this mask, you know, like an ear mask thing, whatever they're called. And the guy was just standing there watching her and I was like, oh my goodness, you know, this is so bad. Like, there are so many people out there that are going through so much and I feel like I should be doing more. I feel like I should be helping people. I feel like I should be there making sure everything's okay. And of course, that really got to me as well. And it just got too much, you guys. It really did. Sorry, I had to pause that just then. I just got really emotional. And so let's just continue on with the story. So we're talking about the lady in the coma. I saw her and that was just so real, you guys. It hit my heart real hard. So then I was called into the CT scanning room by another staff member, maybe 5 minutes after. And I told her, you know, that I didn't get a bandage on my arm, and she gave me one. She was like, oh my goodness, so she gave me one. This nurse wasn't exactly the nicest. She was kind of a little bit like very straight to the point, very serious, like, you know, okay, here's a bandage, and she passed it to me. I was like, okay, like, you know, there was no like, oh, come through, you know. It was just like, okay, come through. Yep. Okay, yep, here's a bandage. Like, there was no, okay, right, okay, cool. So she asked all my details, and it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. I was like, okay, cool, thanks, you know. So she asked all my date of birth, etc. And of course, I confirmed all of them. The lady in the green uniform then appeared back into the CT room where I was standing to assist me with whatever she was going to assist with. I was feeling really anxious because there was this big CT machine. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not going in there, am I? I am not. And I was like, yes, Kylie, it's going to be fine. You're safe. It's okay. Okay. So, of course, I laid down on the CT bed, and it wasn't exactly that uncomfortable, actually. It was actually quite comfortable. Anyways, so I laid down on the bed, and I just didn't find this green, I'm going to call her the green lady, okay? The green lady, because that's what I was calling her yesterday. I didn't find the green lady very attentive to my needs at all. Quite rude and snappy, even at other staff members, which of course, this was my first CT scan ever, and it didn't help me feel reassured about the whole process, let alone what I was going through just then. I felt so anxious and upset at that point. I was then told to lift up my legs, in that tone, impatiently, while I was still trying to adjust situating my head by the other nurse, which was the nurse that gave me the bandage that was kind of very, yeah. We're just going to call her, I don't know, we're not going to give her a name, but we're going to call her Snow White. Well, not Snow White, because she's not friggin' Snow White. Snow White's awesome. She's like, I don't know, the big bad wolf. Let's just, no, big bad wolf. The big bad wolf would be the green lady, I'd say. But yeah, anyway, so this is nurse number 1. All right. So I lift up my leg. She puts this, you know, leg protector, well, not leg protector, but, you know, to support my legs and things. And the idea was to get into the CT scan, try it first without the contrast, and then inject it afterwards if they needed it. After the short scan was completed, I was then told by a completely different nurse, hold up. Before I continue on with the rest of the story, when they was like, you know, gearing me up for the CT, they put like compressors on each side of me and things, and they were like strapping like my body, and well, not strapping my body, but you know, strapping over me to protect it from like a CT scanner and stuff, for my arms and things. And of course I was getting a head scan, and they put these compressors on the side of my head, and the nurse one, she just put them there. She put the strap over my forehead. She did not even tell me what she was doing. She just did it, and she was quite rough. And like, in my personal perspective, I've been in the healthcare industry before as a caregiver, and you don't just strap something onto somebody. You say, okay, such and such, I'm just going to put this on both sides of your head, and you'll feel a little bit of coldness, and then we're going to put the strap over right now. Done. You know what I mean? Not just, oh, here, not say anything. Anyway, so that happened. I was feeling real anxious. My whole head, I was like shaking because that's how nervous and anxious I was. And I remember shaking in the CT scanner too. After the short scan was completed, it took about 3 minutes. I was then told by a completely different nurse, so nurse number 2, that we needed to inject the contrast. The doctor then came in and greeted me, while the nurse number 2 explained fully what was happening, when the contrast went in, and how I would feel. And it was more relieving to hear what was going to happen when. I then understood enough, and I felt comfortable about the process, and I started to relax more. And of course, I would like to say that that doctor and that nurse number 2 actually made things okay. I started to calm down, and I started to feel okay. So they injected the contrast, and he even held my arm, like held pressure on my arm after the contrast was injected. He was like, oh, we don't want you bleeding everywhere. It's just something that we have to do as professionals. And that was all good. I felt really reassured. So nurse number 2 told me then that I had to wait in the waiting room for 5 minutes because it was my first CT scan, and then they far out, I can't speak. I was about to say it, but I wasn't. Sorry, excuse me. I was told by nurse number 2 to wait in the waiting room, and in 5 minutes we will come to check on you, Kylie. Sweet. So I went and sat down in the waiting room. I tried to go sit down in the waiting room, and when I opened the doors, I felt out of it. Literally, my mum was sitting in I think she was sitting in the corner. Yeah, she was standing in the corner. No, she was actually sitting in the corner of the room holding a chair for me. And I didn't even recognize her, you guys. That's how out of it I was. And so I went and sat down in the chair, and Mum was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just feel really dizzy and out of it. Just real dizzy." And, yeah, so luckily, the 5 minutes passed, I felt better, and it was all good. Because I'd literally just come off the CT scan, literally 2 seconds ago, pretty much. So yeah, the final thing was over, and it was great, and I was feeling fine. I had no side effects. Things were good. 10 minutes later, I was still sitting in the waiting room with my mum, and nobody had been out to check on me. To round it off, I would like to say that there was this elderly lady sitting in the waiting room in a wheelchair. She had been sitting there from the whole time I had just walked, she only just just came into the room. Sorry, I'm getting all tongue-tied. She had only just come into the waiting room 5 minutes after I had arrived originally. She was sitting there. She was a very frail, elderly lady, and she had an IV in her arm, and she had this arm, the name band thing around her wrist, and she was just sitting there in her wheelchair. And the lady in the green came back out, and she was like, "What's your name?" to this lady in the wheelchair. And the lady started to explain and say, my name is. Then she got interrupted by the green lady, and the green lady was like, "Okay, what's your name?" And she pointed at this other lady sitting next to her, while this lady was still trying to explain to her who she was. It was heartbreaking to see that. The poor lady appeared to be very frail, you guys, and clearly struggling to even communicate to anyone, let alone the nurse that came and saw her prior to me going into the room. In my personal opinion, the situation is not acceptable at all. The level of service and care provided to me was just below ground, you guys, below anything that I've ever experienced before. My faith that I had left in the health system and the hospital to provide that exceptional care for the public was far from the latter. It was far from the best, the top notch. It was far from it. So it turns out I left the hospital. I got a drink because I wasn't allowed to drink 4 hours prior to going there. Got a drink and I left, and I went home. I still am really bamboozled about the whole thing, and to give the excuse, if they were going to give an excuse, we were really busy that day. Yeah, okay, they were really busy that day, but that is still not an excuse to provide poor care for public residents. Public residents for the community. I laid a complaint with the hospital and also the district health board, because it's not good enough. It is not freaking good enough. And of course, I have to go back to the hospital in a few months' time, and possibly before then as well. So I want some improvement. I want to see that improvement, and I highly doubt it's going to happen, because there's always been an issue with the public health system here. But guys, have you had any experiences with your hospital? Have you had anything horrible happen? Let me know down below in the comments if you would like to share, or private message me, or whatever. I really, really want to know. If you guys are from New Zealand, let me know down below in the comments, because I'm certainly not happy with the way I was treated, and I was not happy. And I would not be happy if my friend, my family, my mum, my friggin' sister, my friggin' partner was treated that way. Even myself. I'm just so bamboozled about the whole thing. So that is what happened to me yesterday. It feels so much better to get this off my chest, to get this out there. And of course, there's no names mentioned, but that is what happened to me yesterday. Anyways, guys, I am going to wrap up this video very soon because I know it's been very long. If you guys have stayed this long, thank you so much. I really appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And don't forget to comment down below any stories, any information, anything that you would like to share with us. It'd be awesome to hear. And anyways, guys, I'm off to film some more Sims videos because I know you'd all like to see some more. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe if you guys would like to. Thank you so much for being here once again. Don't forget, you are beautiful. Yes, you. You're absolutely stunning. You're gorgeous. You are the most amazing human being on the planet. You just are. You're just freaking gorgeous and you look beautiful today. Anyways, guys, I'm off. I love you guys, each and every one of you, and I will see all of you lovelies next time. Bye, guys.